when I get married, my covering is a man, a whole man. And I'm expecting this man to cover me. I was afraid of that. I needed to trust the Lord in the fact that the person that he is going to have me married to will know exactly how to cover me. There are different times where the enemy would try to throw in my face, grass is greener on the other side. But then the enemy will be like, oh, but if you're single, you can live your own life. You don't have to answer to nobody. And whenever I remember the Lord brought us together, I also remember the Lord will keep us together. Another thing is you don't know what you're healed from until it presents itself in the same situation. Things in my flesh, traumas from my past, my exes may have said that would trigger an insecurity, or, having a past where I've been cheated on before. The moment that things are going so well, almost like self-sabotage in a sense, is the shoe about to drop? I'm thinking things are going well, but are things really well? What's good, family? Welcome to the Abide and Seek podcast, where we share the authentic and unfiltered Christian perspective to build in faith, purpose, and spiritual maturity. If you're new here, I'm Taylor, and if you're part of the family, then welcome back. I know it's been a while. I feel like I say that on a lot of these podcasts lately, but life has been lifing, as the kids say these days. I think my last episode was 4 months ago, and then I popped up on social media 2 months ago, just getting engaged. It's been a lot of moving things lately. So I really wanted to just get on here, not just give different life updates. I'm just trying to adjust some stuff on my computer right now, but just to really just dive into the lessons that I've been learning so far, just throughout this relationship, throughout this engagement season. And I wanted to release an episode before the year is out, because I'm like, I just keep on going on these hiatuses, not intentionally, but some of them, it's just the busyness of life. And that's kind of what led me to wanting to record an episode titled, Old Rhythms and New Seasons. I was having a conversation with one of my friends about a month ago. And I was just like, I feel like it is so much harder for me to do the things that I used to do in previous seasons and trying to bring that into this new season, right? Like, I was telling her how it's been harder for me to work out. It's been harder for me to get up early and pray. It's been harder for me to try and just do the things that used to come naturally, and the routine of things. And she was just like, Taylor, are you trying to bring old rhythms into new seasons? And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was just like, oh my gosh, I am trying to bring old rhythms into new seasons. So it's just been a matter of seeking the Lord to see how does he want me to spend time with him in this season. And so on top of all of that and sharing everything that's been going on, this is actually the third episode that I tried to record over this past few weeks. The first episode I tried to record, I just talked about the entire story of me and my fiance, and just went into all of that. It went on for about an hour and a half, and I was like, I don't think that this is the one to release. The second one that I did was just last week, where I did the same thing, but I was just talking off the top of my head about the different lessons that I've been learning in this season. And I'm like, you know what? I mean, it was still a decent episode, but I was just like, you know what? I really need to sit and think and write down all of the lessons that I've been learning in this season, and then really just coming on this podcast and sharing those things, just so that I'm not just too scatterbrained when going through this list. But it's just been it's been great. Let me start off with that. One, things have been great. I know it's just Taylor, where does man come from? You just popped up being engaged. We started dating back in January of this year, of 2025. And it's a long story, and you can, I'll probably talk about it one day. I might even bring him on. He's not really one for attention, but we'll see. We started dating this past January. We met volunteering for a faith-based organization that mentors the youth of Chicago. And we've known each other actually for 2.5 years already. So we had like the same community, same friendship circle. Started dating in January. Started our pre-engagement counseling in April or May. We started talking about it in April. We started it in May. And then got engaged in September 21st. So yeah. And then looking to get married. Of course, that's the big thing, right? Looking to get married in March of 2026. So we are moving along. So it's been a pretty busy season. But good things, right? Really good things. And when him and I were talking about our relationship and everything, and when we were, praying before the Lord, we didn't want to be public until, let me say it like this. We were private, but not secretive, right? So it may seem like it's like huge news to people, right? That we were together, but we've been in community. We've been visiting each other's families, seeing each other's families, and spending a lot of great time together. And, so it may seem like a huge shocker, right, to some, but we were just being private with our relationship. But we would share what we needed to share with the people who we trusted and just building and going from there. So we didn't want to be public about our relationship until we got engaged. So that was just how that went. But outside of all those things, and I probably might do another episode on our journey and everything. I probably should do an episode about our journey and how things went and how the Lord's fingerprints were through it all. But right now we're going to talk about the lessons that I've been learning so far. So the first things first is from the jump, we were just like, hey, we're a team. We're a team, because just from some of the things that we have been listening to, like on different podcasts or even just hearing from different married couples, to be reminded that, hey, it's never a me versus you or you versus me. We are on the same team. We are the same jersey. We are against the enemy. Like that's who we're against. So we just have to be reminded that we are a team. We're on the same team. And sometimes whenever like the enemy tries to infiltrate and like create strife between me and my fiance, we have to be reminded like, hey, we're a team. We're a team. We're working through this, like it's not something where we're just going to be like, you just keep da 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 da. And I feel like that's something too that we've just been learning throughout life in general, using more I statements versus you statements, right? Where it's not like, you keep doing this, you keep doing that, you da 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 da. But instead, like, it's like, hey, I felt blank when this was happening, or I feel this way whenever this happens. So it's just one of those things to then change your statement, and also just watching the tone of how you say things, right? But between my fiance and I, like, we're passionate people, but we're chill in the sense of like, we don't raise our voices. We're not going to be up here yelling at each other or any of those things. Like we respect each other. Like we want to honor each other. We desire to make sure that we see each other as brothers and sisters in Christ, and also as sons and daughters of the living God. And because of that, it's like, hey, like, you don't mess with God's kids, right? So that's how we look at each other, where it's just like, hey, like, we're on the same team. We want to honor the Lord in our relationship. And whenever conflict arises, we want to make sure that we are on the same page. There might be times where we may not see things eye to eye, right? It doesn't mean that everything is perfect and everything is peaches and cream. But the thing is that we're like, okay, how can I step out of my own opinion to see things maybe from his perspective, and put myself in his shoes when it comes to this, and just asking more questions and doing more listening than speaking. That's kind of how we, flow when it comes to this. What's that verse in James where it's like, be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger? kind of following that same principle of things, right? We want to be quick to listen first instead of making assumptions. We want to be careful instead of just like jumping out of our own feelings and saying something and commenting on something. We want to make sure we're like, wait, let me make sure, when you said this, did you say this? Like, or did you mean this? Or even when we're talking, where it's just like, okay, when you said this, I interpreted it this way. Is that what you meant? And that's one of those things where it's like, it's okay to clarify. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to sit in things for a moment and not just always like listen to respond. You want to just listen to actually gather the information of what that person is trying to say, right? So that's kind of just some of the things that we have been, practicing in our relationship. I feel like there's something else about conflicts that's on my list that I probably should have arranged this list to kind of like flow, but here we are. So I felt like yes. So even about handling conflict, so I'm going to go ahead and just rearrange this on my list right here because I would be used to shutting down, and just being like, you know what? Like, I need my space. I just need time to process this. And I don't want it to be where when I'm processing things, I'm becoming emotionally distant. I don't want it to be where I'm giving him the silent treatment, because that's not helpful in the relationship either, right? Like, I'm over here shutting down and being, giving him the silent treatment, thinking that I'm punishing him by removing myself emotionally, and just communing with him in general, and knowing that that's a way that he enjoys like engaging with me is through conversation, through, hearing me speak my mind and hearing my perspective on things, and like removing that from just our daily time together would be seen as an act of not loving him the way that he desires to be loved, by me giving him the silent treatment or removing myself emotionally. And with that, there was a time in October, I want to say. It was definitely October because that was when I went on a conference that weekend. There were different things going on. Nothing like terrible, right? But there were small things. And I know he wouldn't mind me sharing this because it's not really like details. But there was a time where I felt as though he wasn't showing up for me. Or showing up in different areas of like wedding planning and stuff like that, where it felt like there was like a lot of the load that was weighing on me. And now, Taylor, did you communicate this, Taylor? No, you didn't communicate this. So, and I'm saying you and speaking to myself, I'm speaking to myself. I can take the fault where I did not communicate, my expectations with him in the wedding planning process. We did not talk about that. So because there were just like a couple, it was literally like 2 instances, and but it happened in the same week. So because it happened in the same week where it was just like, twice where it felt like, where it felt as though he wasn't showing up for me for the wedding planning process, then that was when I was like, okay, my flesh is starting to rise up. And then that was when the enemy tries to taunt you, like, does he even care? Does he even want to get married? Does he even really want this with you and all these things? Does he even care? So it's like the enemy will try and taunt me with these lies, right? And with the enemy taunting me with those lies, what made me even like just emotional during that time was the fact that I didn't stop the enemy's lies from planting seeds in my heart. I knew that the enemy was taunting me with lies, and I let it seep right through. I let my guard down when the enemy was feeding me these lies, which then built up my flesh. And when him and I were going to have a conversation about it, and he was like, oh, like, I'm sorry. Like, it was just to the point where, like, even when he apologized, I was like, you know what? I need to take some time. Not like a break, nothing like that. But it was just like, I need to take some time to process things, to pray, and even to repent, because right now I want to respond in the flesh. That's what I told him. I said, I'm like, I still love you. I'm still excited to do this with you. But right now I want to respond in the flesh, and I'm not going to do that. So just give me some time to process things with the Lord. And it just so happened that all of this was lining up before I was leaving for 3 days with me and my discipler. And we went to the, the Behold. Oh my goodness. I can't remember the conference right now. But it's a women's conference that was in Indianapolis. Hold on. I have a little thing right here. It's the True Women Conference. I don't know why I said the Behold Conference. But it's the True Women Conference. And that was such a delight to have that weekend. Cause I was like, I have like a little like picture over here. So I was like, let me just look at that real quick, cause I know it has the name of the conference. But the True Women Conference in Indianapolis. And that was such a blessing at that time to be able to go with my discipler and pray and put my heart before the Lord, especially with all those things that were going on. Because that's the thing about handling different conflicts, even when it comes to the person you're in a relationship with, or just friendships, family, and things like that. God will give you that space. I think I did an episode on this talking about Elijah. God will first give you that space to have your own pity party, right? He's not listening to me. He's not helping me. He just da-da-da-da-da-da. And then God's like, okay, all right, you done, with your pity party. Because from there, he was like, okay, I see your perspective. Yes, there was this area where he could have done better, but let's look at you. And that was what God did for me over those couple of days. And I didn't give my fiance the silent treatment. Like, I still talked with him every night that we, were away for that conference. I still texted him and things like that. But, we just did not talk about the offense, because that's what it really was, right? Like, I felt as though he offended me in those areas, and I was holding on to that offense. And when holding on to that offense, it then creates bitterness, and then that then makes you want to not forgive that person. And that's the last thing that you want to do, right? I could definitely go on to many Bible verses about forgiveness and bitterness and all these things. And I'm saying it on this podcast, right? Like, the importance of forgiveness. And it's like, Taylor, follow your own advice. Follow what the word says. You know what I'm saying? So, but it's just so easy when it's like it's so easy for the enemy to try and infiltrate his way into your mind, into your heart, especially when it's someone that you just care deeply about. Right. So that was something where, I took my part in that, and I repented to the Lord, and I brought it to the Lord in all honesty, even in all my flesh, and saying all those things. And the Lord was able to filter out all of those emotions so that when I did have that conversation with my fiance, it was a great breakthrough for our own relationship. To where we then started talking about integrity for the both of us, where we talked about accountability for the both of us, when we laid out our expectations for wedding planning. Like, it was just an amazing time for our relationship when we had that conversation. So yeah, so just be honest. Be honest about when the enemy is feeding you lies, and you want to respond in flesh, but because of self-control, because you want to honor not only your fiance, but your or your spouse, but you want to honor God. Because I knew if I were to lash out on my fiance, it would do no good for him, nor would it be, it would be sinful to the Lord. It would be sinful for me to lash out in anger or to lash out in my flesh and then to say things that I probably would have regretted. So praise God for self-control. So anyway, let's keep on going into this. Another thing on this list. Ooh, I'm already 20 minutes in and I still got a whole long list to go. I only read 2 points. So another thing is you don't know what you're healed from until it presents itself in the same situation. This is something that has literally happened this past weekend, where I was telling my discipler literally this morning, and I was like, I don't know if this is a spiritual attack or if this is something that the Lord is trying to reveal to me to uproot out of me. And it's nothing that my fiance did. Absolutely nothing. It's nothing my fiance did. I had a couple of dreams this past week where it would be one dream where my fiance and I are having a conversation and he is just like going on and on and on about how beautiful this celebrity is. And I'm just like, what is going on? Had another dream where him and I were like on a real cool date. Like him and I were just like, we're just on a nice date. Things were fine. And then it was like a movie scene where it just like cut off and like basically like him and I were both actors and like the scene cut and then he just walked away. And I'm just like, what is going on? Like, this is fake. Like, what is happening? And then I literally had a dream last night where me and him were on a reality show. I don't know where this stuff is coming from, right? Him and I are on a reality show. So it's like, you know, him and I, like, you know, we're cool, we're kicking it, like we're having a great time, like regular stuff. And then like the camera's cut off and he goes to his own place. And I'm just like, okay, what is happening here? And where it doesn't feel real, right? But really the roots of it were from like that first dream where he was like going on and on about this celebrity. And my fiance has never done that. He's never done that. He's never put me in a position of being uncomfortable. But I've been realizing lately that insecurities have been popping up. And I had to even go back on my own channel, on my own YouTubes, and talk about like what happens when insecurity arises and, you know, like just like the issues and the turmoils of comparison and that tension that you carry whenever you try to compare yourself to someone else. And I didn't realize that, like, I thought when it came to insecurities, I'm like, oh, like things are cool. Like, I know who I am, my identity in the Lord. Like, you know, I'm confident in myself. I'm content in myself. I know that there's going to be, you know, like differences between me and other people, but that's not something where I need to start coveting other people's beauty or coveting other people's materialistic things or coveting, like, you know, the status of other people. But instead, I just need to appreciate what God has already gifted me with and walking in that. I'm like, why in the world is insecurities, comparison, and covetousness, say that 3 times fast, and like it's coming up right now? I'm like, what is going on? And I had to present that to the Lord. Like, even when I was talking to my discipler this morning, and what she was telling me when I was like giving this to her is she was saying, like, you know, Taylor, maybe these are areas of healing that is happening right now because you're in a secure relationship. And I told her, I'm like, this is literally the most secure I have ever been. Like, the most secure I have ever been in an entire relationship before. Like so secure spiritually, emotionally, mentally. Like I am the most secure I've ever been. And the fact that now it's like things in my flesh, traumas from my past, where in all, like, and that's what I was telling my discipler. I'm like, in my past relationships, like, I thought that things were going well. Granted, it was just a facade. I thought that things were going well, but then there would be things that my exes may have said that would trigger an insecurity, or they would say something that like is a comparison between me and someone else, or, you know, having a past where I've been cheated on before. So it's like, it's one of those things where, you know, the moment that things are going so well, almost like self-sabotage in a sense, where it's like, okay, is the shoe about to drop? Like, is something about to happen? Like, you know, what's going on? Like things, I'm thinking things are going well, but are things really well? Do I have rose-colored glasses on? So that was just something where I thought that was just really interesting just to sit in and think about, where it's just like, okay, am I really healed from these insecurities? Am I really getting out of the mindset of comparison? And even like with all of those things, that was where the source of people pleasing would come out. Like, oh, let me do this to show that I'm wife material to this person, to show that I can do this thing to please this person in this relationship. And it wasn't out of true love, but it was out of like something transactional, where it's like, okay, I want you to stay, so I'm gonna do this, or I want to keep you around, so I'm going to do this. And that was something where I didn't realize, like, I thought I healed from it completely, but things mentally, I need to still go through and walk with God and take spiritual inventory. I feel like I say that a lot on this channel. Take spiritual inventory to really nip it in the bud and not fall into these lies of the enemy, where he's trying to raise up some of these insecurities and areas of comparison that I may have with different people and things like that. So next, keep the main thing the main thing. This is something that my fiance and I say like all throughout our relationship. Keep the main thing the main thing. And that's something that we got from our pre-engagement counselor, which is also our pastor. And that was something where he's like, hey, keep Christ at the center. Just remember, like, you know, this is an assignment from the Lord. And that we, you know, this is what we need to say to each other whenever we need to fix our eyes back on Jesus. And just to remember, like, hey, like, we're in this together. We are a team, right? That's the very first thing. You know, the Lord is in this. You know, you're looking at the winds and waves of life right now. Recenter and put your eyes back on the Lord. Keep the main thing the main thing. Next, healthy boundaries. So I think outside of, you know, the regular boundaries of things, as far as like respect and how we handle conflict, how we love each other well, we just have healthy boundaries when it comes to conversation. Not saying that there's anything that we would hide from each other, but it's one of those things where sometimes there are boundaries in relationships where, how can I put this? When it comes to healthy boundaries and conversations, if we do get upset with one another. So just like when I talked about like conflict resolution, or healthy boundaries with each other to be able to keep each other safe. There are some things where we have to tell each other like, hey, can this be just an us conversation? Because there are some things where something may happen in our relationship and we do want to seek advice, right, from our disciplers, from our trusted community. But then there are other times where it's like, hey, this needs to be an us conversation. So not just where we're just like pillow talking or anything like that. I mean, we're not sharing pillow anyway, but you know what I mean? Where we're just like, you know, spreading different things from what other people have said, like, and sharing that and like, gossiping or whatever. We're not doing any of that. But like, there are some things where it's like, hey, I want this just to be between you and I, and having those boundaries, healthy boundaries in our own relationships when it comes to communication. There are some things where it's like, okay, hey, this is going on. I do want to have prayer in this, like, you might want to like, seek your disciplers or your community in how we can maybe face this challenge in our relationship together. And that's something that, he would take to his community, right? So we do have healthy boundaries in those types of aspects. Boundaries physically, I'll go ahead and talk about those. So we have boundaries physically where we don't spend the night over each other's house. We just don't. Our curfew with each other, being over each other's house. Now, if we're out and about, that's one thing, like on a date, it's one thing. But if we're over at each other's house, like just chilling, we're not over there past 10 o'clock. That's just the boundary that we set. Even when it comes to the boundaries that the Lord put on my heart before we even got into a relationship, the Lord told me, whenever you have a guy over at your house that you're interested in or that you're dating, you will not be drinking any alcohol. No alcohol when you're over at your place. And that was because of my past, right? Where I would be comfortable in my space, right? So if I'm comfortable in my space, we may have a glass of wine, but from there, things might progress, right? So that was a boundary that the Lord put on my heart, where like him and I may, go out to dinner and, maybe have like a glass of wine or something. But when it comes to like us hanging out in my space, we're not going to be actively drinking any alcohol. Another boundary that the Lord put on my heart was no kissing on the lips. So until you're married. So our first kiss will be at the wedding. That's something that the Lord put on my heart as well, because when you're kissing and everything, like that can get pretty passionate, right? And that can lead to can lead to sex. It can lead to just all the other things that we're not trying to cross right now, right? So because of that, we just don't want to be a stumbling block to each other. And from there, when I first told him that, he was like taken aback a little bit, like, oh man, like we can't, like even after engagement. I'm like, oh, definitely not after engagement, because like that's when things are getting closer. But he respected that boundary, so we're not kissing on the lips or anything until we get married. So, and that has honestly been a very helpful boundary for us, because especially as we're getting closer to marriage, it gets harder, right? It gets harder, and that was something too where it's like you think that you're cool with abstinence and you've been doing it for a long time. But the moment that you find your person, the moment that you get engaged, it's like, well, we getting married. So, but that's not something that we want to do, because we want to honor the Lord in our relationship. We want to continue to follow the ways and the boundaries and the guidelines in which God has set for us during this season of life. So that's something that we are also honest about with each other, where if it's something where it's like, hey, we probably spent a little bit, too much cuddling time here or something like that, or, like it's starting to get a little bit too late, like I really need to go. Like we're pretty honest about the times where temptation starts to creep in with each other. And I feel like that really was a good breakthrough in our relationship, because sometimes people are not honest about the temptations that you're facing, even if it's just with each other. And from there, it's just like, okay, now we're starting to push the boundary a little bit too much, and we need to just reel it back a little bit. So we're just mindful of those boundaries physically, so that we can continue to honor the Lord, and have a heart of purity, even a mindset of purity. I feel like that's a hard part too, where mentally, how can we put up these guardrails to make sure that we are operating in purity? And that was something that early on in the relationship, probably in like February. I think it was February. Where I, I'm attracted, right, to him. And I wanted to be romantic with him, in different ways. And I remember when I was condemning myself of feeling attracted to him. Like, that's probably not the right way to put it, because of course you're going to be attracted to him, right? But I was starting to condemn myself for the feelings that were in response to my attraction to my fiance. I say that because when I was single, I would put all attraction, all romance, all even feelings of lust and like feeling like aroused. I put all of that into a box, and I labeled that an off limits box. And because of that, when my fiance and I started getting together and dating, and I was like, man, I am really attracted to this man. Like, I want to be romantic with him. When I started having those feelings, those feelings in response to those emotions, I was condemning myself for it. And I remember the Lord clearly told me, he was like, Taylor, don't call unclean what I call clean. Granted, that was a Bible verse that pertained to Peter in Acts, where he had that vision about, the sheet came down from heaven, and it was all these animals, the clean and the unclean ones. And the Lord said, take up and eat. And Peter was like, no, 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 all those things, right? So, but when the Lord put that on my heart, Taylor, don't call unclean what I call clean, I knew that he was saying, hey, this is there are healthy boundaries of attraction. There are healthy boundaries of emotional responses to romance. There are healthy boundaries that you can have right now. But in my own heart, when I was single, I labeled all of that just off limits. All of it, because I didn't want to get caught up in all of that. So the thing is that when you're attracted, right, to the person that you're with, when you are walking in these proper boundaries that the Lord has set, as long as I am not fantasizing beyond the space and the season that him and I are in, then that is something that is clean right now, figuratively, in this moment. So as long as I am like, I'm like, oh, I like spending time with him. I like holding his hand, kiss him on the cheek, that kind of thing. Or he kisses me on the cheek. Like, I love that, right? Or us going on dates and us being romantic and all us feeling all like lovey-dovey, like, that's okay. But the moment that I start fantasizing about things beyond this engagement season, that's where it becomes a problem. That's where I need to repent. That's where I need to take a step back and be like, okay, I need to reel in these emotions and these thoughts, because I'm crossing a boundary. Because I may not be crossing a boundary physically, but I'm crossing a boundary mentally. And the reason why this is so important, especially when it comes to keeping your heart set on purity, is because even what the Lord said in the Gospels, right? Even in Matthew, where it's like, if you even look at a woman with lust, you have committed adultery in your heart. And the thing is that I look at that same principle. I mean, it's kind of different because it's with the guy that you're about to marry, but it's like, I don't want to cross that boundary of just looking at him with lust and doing things, beyond this engagement season, like post-married life. I don't want to fantasize about those things, because now I am crossing a mental boundary where we can't cross a physical boundary yet. Hopefully that makes sense. But that's something where I am still trying to work in. I'm still trying to put that before the Lord, and just confess that and repent for whenever I do have those moments of crossing that boundary mentally about my relationship. So let's see, other things. Oh, that's something. Okay. Even when it comes to having healthy conversations about intimacy. I'm just going to talk about intimacy in general, not just physical. I think what is also hard right now is that it's not like him and I are just like thinking about sex all the time. It's none of those things. But it's the fact where we have no boundaries, or they're healthy, right? But we have no limitations, I'll say. I'm going to use the word limitations. We have no limitations for each other emotionally. We have no limitations when it comes to each other mentally. We have no limitations when it comes to each other spiritually. But because we have limits and on things physically, I think that's what makes it harder, because it's like we're experiencing intimacy with each other emotionally. Like when we're sharing the depths and the problems of and our issues of our hearts, we're sharing intimacy spiritually with the things that God is, rebuking us in, or the lessons that we're learning, and all of the ways that we're growing together in faith. We're having intimacy mentally, right? Like with different more conversations, that we're having, and sharing interests, and all of these things that we're enjoying with each other. So because we're able to have freedom in intimacy spiritually, emotionally, mentally, it's even harder right now because we have limits. We don't have as much freedom to have intimacy physically right now in this season. And that's what makes things like just a little bit tougher right now in this season. So that's kind of what is the hardest part about abstinence in this moment, is the fact that we're having intimacy and freedom in all these other areas, but we have to limit it physically right now. But something that I do want to talk about when it comes to intimacy, even when we have conversations about intimacy, they are not like the way that they used to be when I was in the world, right? It's not like, ooh, do you like this? Do you like that? It's not like that. But the thing is that when we have healthy conversations about intimacy, it's, ooh, how can I put this without trying to say too much? It's more so where we have to talk about our levels of trust with each other. We have to talk about the fact of our level of comfortability with each other. And this is why communication is even so important, because it's like, okay, when we are moving forward towards marriage, or when we are moving forward towards, physical intimacy, are there things about your past that we need to discuss so that we don't cross a boundary? Or are there different things that I may have said or done that may turn you away physically and emotionally? How would you like for feedback to be said in different areas? Or when it comes to connecting emotionally, what are some ways that we can, I don't know, I'm really trying to like bounce around different things right now without saying things directly, but it's like with when we are engaging emotionally, what are some things where we can, what are some things that are safe to do in private versus things that are safe to do in public, or things like that, right? So it's just different things. Like you can have conversations about intimacy, and healthy conversations about intimacy, because it's more than just what do you like or what do you don't like, or what are you doing with this, or what do you, it's more than all of those things, where it starts to sound like a lusty kind of conversation. But the thing is that you want to build healthy areas of trust, healthy areas of communication, because when it comes to getting closer to that time, like you want to be able to set up different expectations in place, so that's like, okay, how can we recenter as a couple again? How can we go back to home base? How can we make sure that we are still honoring each other in these vulnerable and intimate moments? So it's more than just physical. It's, different areas of intimacy, emotionally, spiritually. And that's something too. Something that I'm learning and, currently is, yes, there's one thing to have intimacy spiritually when you're alone, but what does it look like to have intimacy spiritually with my fiance and the Lord? That's been an area that I've been growing in, because I'm very used to like, oh, it's me and God. Like, it's me and God. Like, him and I, like, we coolin', we kicking in, we good. And having that intimate time together. But something that, like, with my fiance and I, like, yes, we have spiritual conversations, or we talk about some of the things that we have learned in our own quiet time with the Lord. But now it's like, how can both me and him have intimate time with the Lord together? So we're doing Bible plans together. We are praying together at night on the phone. And so there's just different areas that we're trying to grow in as far as our spiritual intimacy with the Lord together. And that's been an area of growth for me too. Let's see, what else? Oh, so something else that I talked about, pre-engagement counseling. So I had no idea about pre-engagement counseling. In my head, I'm like, oh, we're just gonna, do premarital after we're engaged, right? But when we were talking with different couples, and even when we met with our pastor, he was just like, well, not just our pastor, but my fiance was like, hey, this is our first time doing this, right? Like, we know that we're in a serious relationship. We know that we want to get married to each other, but we also have the maturity to recognize that we don't know everything. And we also have the humility to know that we don't know everything. And because we are venturing and journeying into this space in this season together as one, we want to make sure we are under proper counsel as we are being guided down this road. So we were just like, hey, are there conversations that him and I need to be having? Are there different topics we need to bring up? How can we hold each other accountable? And we wanted to have those conversations because the last thing we wanted to do was to try and have these conversations while you're planning a wedding, or you're already engaged and you haven't talked about how to deal with finances, or you haven't talked about, like your future with kids, or, where you want to live, or your careers and your goals. Like, we wanted to have these different conversations before engagement, so that we knew that we wanted to make sure that him and I were aligned, before, he invests in getting a ring, gets on one knee, and then we're engaged, we're having these conversations, and we're like, ooh, I don't think we're aligned, So because we had that wisdom, right, that was planted in the both of us, we went to his pastor and we were like, hey, what kind of conversation should we be having? And he was like, you know what, we can do some pre-engagement counseling. And we were like, oh, cool. So we were working through this book called Tying the Knot. I may put a picture up here. And when we worked through that book, our pastor was saying, like, okay, these first 5 chapters are going to be what we work through pre-engagement. The last 3 chapters is what we're going to work through post-engagement. And we were like, okay, cool. So with those first 5 chapters, all of it focused on having Jesus at the center, i.e. keep the main thing the main thing. And at first I was like, man, this is so repetitive. Like, it's like, conflict with Jesus at the center, love with Jesus at the center, and, all these things. I'm like, man, it's like, we get it, keep Jesus at the center. Cool. We got it. But the thing is that, like, I'm glad that we had those first 5 chapters, to really get inside of our spirit with that repetition, because now him and I are saying to each other, okay, let's keep God at the center. Like, yes, we want to do this in our wedding, but let's make sure God is at the center. Or yes, we want to we do want to, make this purchase, but is God at the center of it? So it's like, there's different goals that him and I have, and we have to then ask each other, like, is God at the center? So that's something where I'm glad we did it. And that's something that I even recommend to all seriously dating couples is to do pre-engagement. 100%. 100% suggest doing pre-engagement counseling. Whether that, you both get a book and you work through it together and you have a trusted person that you go to, like a discipler or your pastor or things like that, just to work through things before taking that big step of engagement. Because honestly, after engagement, you want to focus on the wedding planning. You want to focus on, enjoying the engagement season and building together, because he's never going to be my fiance again, and I'm never going to be his fiance. Granted, we'll be husband and wife. That's very different, right? But you want to be able to enjoy your season of engagement, especially with the wedding planning. That can get a little hectic, just a little bit. Where it's like you're trying to find, the attire and the venue and the financial investment that comes with weddings. They can get so expensive. But I'm glad that we are staying in our budget. So it's just one of those things where it's like there are so many other things you could be focusing on during wedding planning, where it's like you want to make sure that you have a solid foundation that you have built pre-engagement before getting to that stage. Let's see. Oh, okay. So something else. Let's see. We already talked about healthy communication, but discerning the time of conversations. I am the type that is like, it's on my mind, I'm ready to get it out. It's on my mind, let's have a conversation about it. Let's talk about this, let's talk about that. But the thing is that there would be days where he's like, hey, I had a really rough day at work. All I can use is encouragement right now. I don't have the capacity for a deep conversation about something. And that's something that I have to gauge with him, or I have to ask. I just ask, even though it's bubbling like this popcorn inside of me where I just need to get it out. I have to then have the self-control and even make sure I'm not having any bitterness in my heart where I'm like, he just doesn't want to have time for me. He just doesn't want to, I need to make sure that I'm not letting the enemy control my mind in that way. Instead, I'm like, okay, let's have these conversations at a good time, and I also would bring up the conversations where it's like, hey, is this something that I really need to even talk about, or is this something where I can have this conversation with the Lord, or I can talk about it with my prayer circle. And it's not something that I necessarily need to always bring up. I'm trying to really think of an example. Let's say it's something politically. Let's say it's something where a stance happened or something happened in the news, and I'm just like, I need to know your perspective on this, news thing. And it's like, okay, yes, I do want to have this conversation with my fiance, right? But the thing is if he's had a bad day, do I really need to bring this up right now? Is this at the top of the list of importance? Can I talk about this with friends? Can I talk about this with family and my sisters or something like that? Is this really a pressing conversation that him and I need to have right now? Something else that him and I do that I didn't put in this list, but I'm thinking about it now. And this was his idea. We have monthly meetings. We've been doing monthly meetings, I think after 3 months of dating, we started doing monthly meetings. So in these monthly meetings, we talk about we do a temperature check. How's the health of the relationship? We go over our schedules, where we're just like, okay, these are the events that are happening this month. Here's some future traveling plans that we need to just make sure that we, keep in mind. So we go over schedules, and different events and different dates that we may have planned that month. We also go over things. What else? Prayer points and things like that. We have these questions of spiritual development. What has the Lord been teaching you throughout this month? How can your how can I look more like Christ? What are some ways that I have not been looking like Christ? So it's like different questions that we have about helping each other spiritually. So those are some other things that we've been doing. So with some of those topics, like, right, where it's like, if it's like a deep conversation topic where I recognize that my fiance may not have the capacity for it, like to talk about things all throughout the week, I sometimes write those things down, and I may even save it for the meeting. Or I might write those things down and I might save it for, like, whenever we go out on a date versus like us being on the phone, during the week. So that's something where I had to learn just how to discern the timing of different conversations, because the last thing I would want to do is to have him like push past his capacity and he doesn't give me the engagement and responses that I'm looking for, right? But it's because he physically can't. Like he had a hard day. So it's like, if I'm looking for you to have this deep, in-depth psychological conversation and, you've had a really rough day at work, he doesn't have the capacity for that. So it's just one of those things to, have better discernment when it comes to that. Let's see. Ooh, so this was something I didn't realize that I had a fear of submission. The Lord last year, and I want to say I had a few videos on this where I talked about like when the Lord was like submission, 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 surrender, surrender, surrender. And I didn't realize that my fear of submission was not that I was trying to be prideful and trying to be the independent woman. You know what I'm saying? It had nothing to do with that. But it's the fact of like my covering is what I'm thinking of. I wrote down in a journal last year where I was like, Lord, like I recognize that the person that you have me with, it's an assignment. Like it's not just an assignment. It's you made this person intentionally for me in this moment, because you know that you're not going to have me just under just a person who can't cover me, So that was something where I had a fear of submission and marriage. Like it was a small fear, like not like an overall fear of like submission or an overall fear of marriage. Like, but it was like a small area of submission and a small area of marriage where I was like, wow, when I get married, my covering is a man, a whole man, like a whole man, like a man who is also sinful, a man who is also human, a man who is not perfect. And I'm expecting this man to cover me. I was afraid of that, because as a single woman, right, as the daughter of the Lord, you're used to just connecting with your father, and that is your covering. You're in your church and your covering is being under your pastor, who is your shepherd, right? Like that is your covering, So I'm going from that kind of covering to now I have this other layer of a man covering me and him having the responsibility to do that. But the thing is that it's not that I had a fear of it's not that I had a fear of submission. It's not that I had a fear of marriage. My thing is that I had an issue with trust. I needed to learn how to trust the Lord with my fiance. I needed to learn that I needed to trust the Lord in knowing that he will still cover me because I am still his daughter and that he still cares about me. And the thing is that I needed to trust the Lord in the fact that the person that he is going to have me married to will know exactly how to cover me. Not just in prayer, but just in protection, in provision, in all of these different areas where a man is supposed to act in those different types of husband duties, right? And that can go into a whole different types of an offshoot conversation of the duties of a husband or what to look for in a husband and all those things. That could be a whole different conversation. So I'm not even going to touch that right now. But the thing is that I had to trust God that he would place me with someone that will compliment me, but also cover me, and will also go with me in the assignment that we are called out to carry out as a married couple. So that was what I realized. It wasn't a fear of being in submission to a man, and being under the covering of a man, but I needed to learn how to trust God with him. And that's going to be an ongoing thing because that's something too where on the back end of trusting God with my fiance, I also needed to make sure that my heart was pure. I know we talked about purity a little bit, but purity really means a lot to me. And I probably need to have a separate podcast about it. But the thing about purity, it's not just a matter of having a pure heart just from things sexually or lustfully or things physically, but having a pure heart that reflects the Lord's heart, having a pure heart free from ill motives and wickedness, and having a heart that is filled with things that please the Lord. That's what purity, that's what it means to be pure, right? So the thing is that not only do I need to trust the Lord with my fiance, but I need to make sure that my heart is pure so that I am not manipulative. That might have struck somebody, because I know that definitely struck me. Because when God places you with somebody, and especially even with me and my fiance, the thing that I love is that my fiance considers my opinion. He weighs heavily, like he weighs my thoughts heavily, right? Not to where like he's like not having his own voice, or not that he's seeking out the Lord for himself. But the thing is like he truly values what I have to say, which I love. I love that about him. So because he does value the wisdom that I share, I also need to recognize and make sure that the things that I am saying is not manipulative to have my own agenda accomplished and not the Lord's agenda accomplished. So that's very, very important, because I mean, look at what happened with Samson and Delilah, right? Like the thing is that like as a soon to be wife, like you guys are going to be becoming one flesh. And with operating in one flesh, he's going to be like, oh, like you are like, you are a part of me and I'm a part of you, flesh of my flesh, bone of my bone. You know what I'm saying? So it's like because him and I are operating as a team, it just goes back to that. We're operating as a team. We're keeping the main thing, which is the Lord at the center of our relationship. I need to make sure, even with Eve, like she took that fruit, which was in disobedience to the Lord, and gave it to Adam. Granted, Adam was right there, but we're not talking about that right now. But the thing is that in my position, I need to recognize that I could either carry out my own will, which is manipulative, or I can carry out the Lord's will in walking in obedience. And with that in mind, that is why I recognize that I take my position as a fiance, as a soon-to-be wife, very seriously, because I know that the enemy will try to use me to get to him. And I don't want it to be me leaving my gates open, leaving my ears open to the enemy, allowing for the enemy to sow seeds in my heart to then get to him, which will then throw him off of the assignment of this marriage and his assignment as a son of God. And that's the reason why when it comes to manipulation, that right there are things, that's why trust in the Lord is so important. I'm going to give you a real life example. It was all throughout, like from April to August. From April to August, that's 4 months. For 4 months, my fiance has been looking for a job. He was looking for a job, and he was like going on all these interviews, and I've been praying, and I would pray, right? We would pray, we cover him before he goes to his interviews and, the night before and things like that, because he wanted to get a new job. he currently had a job, but he wanted to get a new job that, suited more of his work-life balance. Now, there was this job, and it's a job he's currently at, spoiler alert, but there's this job, right, that came across, right, his email and stuff, where he was in the interview process. He went through like 3 rounds of interviews, and they gave him an offer. Now, the offer was something where it was out of the potential limits that my fiance was looking for, but everything else checked the box. Literally everything else checked the box, except for like the salary and everything. And the thing is that I would, we were praying. And the thing is that before going into Labor Day, I was praying. I'm like, Lord, let him get an offer before Labor Day. Spoiler alert, he got an offer. Because he was between, sorry, I know I'm like all over the place in the story. I didn't think I was going to share this story, but I am going to share this story. So throughout August, he was between 3 different jobs. He was between 3 different jobs, interviewing, like all these different rounds of interviews for 3 different jobs. And, but with one of them, again, it checked all the boxes except for the salary. The other ones, they were like working remote, but it could cause for different things. It was just different things that he had to compromise on, even though the pay looked good. But the thing is that for the out of those 3, with one of them, literally all the boxes were checked except for the salary box. So then for me, as I was praying, and I didn't disclose this to him till later, I was praying. I'm like, Lord, if he's doing all the pros and cons with these jobs, and there's this one job where even though the salary may not have been the best, but everything else checks the box. I'm like, Lord, I pray that I pray that he gets, the job that you want him to be at. But 2, I pray that he gets an offer. He gets an offer to the job that you want him at before Labor Day. And again, he's between 3 jobs, right? He's interviewing between 3 jobs. He gets an offer. This is just me praying, though. I kept it hidden in my heart. I didn't tell him this. I was like, Lord, please let him get an offer from the job that you want him to be at, before Labor Day. And I was secretly praying. I was secretly praying and hoping that it was that job, with that one that checks all the boxes except for the salary. I was hoping it was that one. So then what happens? He gets an offer from that job. So in my head, I'm like, yes. And with him, he's like, they gave me the weekend of Labor Day to think about it. I don't know. So he was literally going back and forth. Should I take it? Should I not? Should I take it? Should I not? He was presenting it for the Lord and things like that. And the thing is that he was about to not take it. He was about to not take it. But the thing is that when we sat down and him and I were having a conversation, he was like, Taylor, should I take this job or not? Everything in my body wanted to say, take this job. I prayed for this. Take this job. Like literally everything in me. So I said, give me a second. I'm like, let me just take some time, just a couple minutes. I'm like, just give me a couple minutes. Like him and I were having a conversation. I said, give me a couple minutes. And I literally looked away and I just closed my eyes for a second so I can literally hear the Lord speak to me. And what the Lord told me to tell him after those 2 minutes, and I went back into the conversation, I was like, the Lord wants you to seek him on the answer. I already knew the answer. But the Lord had me tell him, seek the Lord on this answer. And I said, I don't want you to rely on what I have to say. I want you to rely on what the Holy Spirit guides you to do. Man, that was so hard because I was like, if this man does not take this job, so the thing is that he was literally going back. He was going back and forth after that conversation him and I had. Like, he was like, oh, I don't know if I want to take the job. Like, I still want to wait on the other two. Maybe they might give me an offer. And, because their salary range is in the range that he wants it to be in. And I'm just like, but he was like, but I have to compromise on this, or I got to compromise on that. Like, this traveling or any other type of thing. And, or this commute or whatever. And eventually he ended up taking the job. And he loves it there. Like, he loves it there. Granted, there are some issues, right? There's always going to be some ups and downs with your job. But the thing is like, the work-life balance is amazing for him. But the thing is that, and I didn't disclose it till after he signed the offer. And I was like, see, the Lord told me, like, So he was like, well, why didn't you just tell me? I was like, because I couldn't. It was a level of trust, right? I had to trust the Lord that he will guide my fiance into the decision that he needed to go. Because the Lord was like, Taylor, you're not going to take the credit. You're not taking the credit. You are not taking the credit. Because I knew if I were to have told him, hey, I've been praying that the Lord will give you an offer from the job that you need to take the thing from, or all these things. Like, if I were to have said that, yes, it would have been from the Lord, but I would have gotten some of the glory. I would have gotten some of the credit. And that's not how it needs to be, right? So the thing is that in doing all of this, I needed to make sure that I am not in a position where I can manipulate the growth of my fiance and his relationship with the Lord. So that was something. I didn't think that I was going to share that story, but that was been an interesting thing. What else? Because I know I'm already at an hour, so I need to go ahead and keep on going. The assignment of marriage, just to be reminded that it's for sanctification and the advancement of God's kingdom. It's to make you look more like Christ, and it is to make sure that we are advancing towards the mission of God. Not just using my own gifts and his gifts to do things in ministry, but also to do things together in our own relationship. So that's something as far as like the assignment of marriage. Let's see. Oh, the importance of community. So important. So important. So important. I don't think that I can reemphasize that enough. The importance of community. So with community, I not only have my discipler, but I have a group of women, of married women and engaged women, and mothers, that I'm in a community with. I have a Bible study group that has women from different statuses, right? Some are single, some are married, some are single mothers, and some are married mothers. So it's a mix. So I have different communities where I'm able to, I don't share all my business, right? But there's just different levels where it's like I'm gleaning from different areas, and I have these different pockets where I can just lean on when it comes to prayer, when it comes to advice, and when it comes to wisdom. So very thankful for my community. So thankful. I'm going to rewind a little bit about the manipulation thing. I just saw this on here too. When the Lord reveals a flaw to you, that means he trusts you to handle that flaw. This is what I mean, or to steward it well. Let me say it like that. If the Lord highlights something in my fiance to me, the Lord is going to look at how I steward that. One, it means he trusts me, right? I'm thankful, right? I'm thankful that the Lord trusts me to reveal that area to me. But I need to make sure I don't poke at that as like a sore spot, as like a weakness to keep throwing in his face. Instead, there are different things where the Lord may reveal something and I do bring it up to him, right? And I'm like, hey, babe, like, have you noticed this? Or did you realize that you do that? Something like that. Or there may be something that the Lord reveals and I am just told to pray for him and intercede. And the thing is that when times like that would happen, that's when I really have to trust the Lord, because it'll be so funny because there'll be things that I'll be praying on or the Lord will reveal it. I would pray on it and he would be like, babe, like, did you know that this person in my community said this about me? I think I am going to work on that. And I'm like, I think you should too. How can I support you in that? So because I don't want it to be where all of the correction, all of the it could come off as nagging sometimes, but I don't want it to be where all the correction just comes from me. And then from there, it's like, I want to be able to, affirm him, right? And make sure like, hey, like, like we're still both growing. Like, how are ways that I can be corrected? How are ways that, I need to be held accountable? So that's something too, where it's like, if the Lord reveals something, sometimes it's not always meant for you to solve it. Hello, message. Whenever there's something that's revealed to you, you may just need to go on your knees in prayer about it. And the Lord will then use other people to reveal different things, or the Lord will reveal it to himself. And that's something that that's why the underlying thing is literally trust the Lord. Like, and I know it can come off as very churchy, but it's like, you have to trust the Lord. Like, you have no other choice but to trust the Lord when it comes to all of this. And he's going to show you, like, you need to trust me. Like, you have no other choice but to trust him. And just like what I revealed in one of my past episodes about my dental exam and getting my dental license and being able to be in this career, I had no other choice but to trust the Lord. And I look at my license, like, not every day, but like whenever I want to complain about my job, I think about being in that position where I did not have my license, like, and how I had no other choice but to trust in the Lord. So because God had to use that moment as a stake in my, or a spiritual marker in my journey, I always reflect on that moment. Taylor, trust the Lord. Taylor, trust the Lord in that moment. Trust the Lord with your fiance. What else? We're coming to the end of it, I promise. 2 more things. These last 2 things, I think that's it. The weight of covenant. I recognize, I'm not in it yet, right? I'm not in the covenant yet, but I recognize the weight of covenant, especially when I look at the new covenant of that the Lord Jesus made the sacrifice of his body and his blood that was shed for us to be able to go to heaven, right? That's the gospel. I know there's a whole lot more in there, but I'm just trying to speed things along right now. So when we look and you analyze the new covenant that Jesus, has, paid the price for in this new covenant, I then start to look at all the other covenants that are in the word, all the other covenants that are made, like declarations of importance. And the thing is that when it comes to marriage, that covenant is not just a cutesy little wedding. You put on your little white dress and you have a nice little party, you have a good time. That covenant of marriage, like, I cannot break this. This is not something that is deemed to be like until death. You know what I'm saying? Like, literally, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, through sickness and in health. Like, when you look at all those aspects and all those different seasons, you are called to stand by that person. You are called to be with that person and to love them and nurture them in all those types of seasons. It's not for richer or richer, for richer, for health or healthier, for good or better. Like, it's not that, so it's like to recognize that there are different seasons of different things. And like, the only thing that will separate us is death. That's a very weighty thing to sign up for. And because of that, I have to remember that the Lord brought us together. There are different times where the enemy would try to throw in my face, the grass is greener on the other side. Taylor, you don't have to submit, you don't have to submit to this man if you just stay by yourself. You can make your own decisions. You don't have to go to him, to try and not get approval or permission. But it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I need to consider him in this decision. But then the enemy will be like, oh, but if you're single, you can do what you want. You can go where you want. You can do what you want to do. You can live your own life. You don't have to answer to nobody. Just run. Just go. Things will be so much easier when you can walk in the freedom of making your own decisions and not have to, consult anybody. That would be something that the enemy would try to tempt me with. But especially when there's times of conflict or times of challenging moments in my relationship, sometimes that the enemy will throw that in my face hey, you could always still just be single. Grass is a little greener on the other side. But the thing is that that's a bold-faced lie. Marriage is a gift. There's beauty in this commitment. And I have to remind myself, the Lord brought us together. And whenever I remember the Lord brought us together, I also remember the Lord will keep us together. And whenever there is a situation or anything like that, and we don't have too many conflicts, but they do arise. We have disagreements. So it's not like him and I have fights or anything like that or arguments, but we just have maybe some disagreements where we're seeing things from a different perspective. And then we're okay, how can we come together? So I'm the way that we navigate things, it's pretty, just the way that the Lord has us together. He keeps us together. So I'm very thankful for that. I don't know if I really explained that point for real, but it's really just in the sense of if him and I go through a disagreement, almost like what I talked about, with the whole, him showing up for me, things like that. We do take that time, if we need to. That was the only time actually where we really need to take that time of processing and things like that. But outside of that, if we had a disagreement on something, it's okay, we have this disagreement. How can we see something from a different perspective? Let's have a conversation about this. Let's seek the Lord on this, and let's, put a pin in this and talk about this later, So, but we actually do make a conscious, not conscious decision, but we make a commitment to rehashing that conversation. So it's not something where we're oh, we're just going to talk about this later, sweep it under the rug. It's not like we're doing that. What we are doing is okay, we are going to seek the Lord. We're going to seek counsel if need be, or if it's just an us conversation, then that's different. But we will talk about this again. And we make the commitment to talk about it again. So that's something else about this relationship that I'm very thankful for, that we're able to handle disagreements well and handle conflict well, and to still come together and recognize hey, we're in this, So I want to say that that's it. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah, that's it. That's it, y'all. So that's it. I know it's been almost, an hour and a half, but those have been all of the lessons that I've been learning so far, throughout this engagement season, throughout being in this relationship. I don't want it to be where this podcast is solely on relationship stuff. But I do recognize that getting married is going to be a very significant portion of my life, and because of that, if I do bring in some of those things that the Lord is showing me, and revealing to me in my marriage, or, anything like that, it's still going to be focused on the Lord and the different lessons that he's revealing to me that I need to share, and maybe even some reminders that I need to do for myself, if I look back at my old videos. But that's just one of those things where it's not solely centered around relationships or anything like that moving forward. This episode specifically, though, is about the lessons I've been learning during this time, especially because I haven't talked about any of these lessons leading up until this moment, because my fiance and I have been private since our engagement. So I just wanted to have a dedicated episode on the lessons that I've been learning throughout my engagement, throughout my relationship, and leading up until marriage. And I pray that, this episode was a blessing to somebody, and that these tips are things that you can even hold in your pocket. Like if you are single, and these are just different lessons that it's like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna hold on to this, this golden nugget. Or if you're in a relationship and you're considering marriage, like these are some things to go over. Last thing before I close out, there was this video, and I'll tag it in the description box, and I'll also put the article so you can reference it too. Pastor Vlad, he put these 64 questions before you get engaged. My fiance and I actually walked through these questions as we were going through pre-engagement. So we were walking through those questions, and they were great questions. Like it's things like, what are your views on if your child strays away from the faith? How do you handle finances? Do you want separate accounts or joint? How will you handle elderly parents? Should we, how should we reveal if we have had a previous relationship within our community that we share? How much of my past do you want to know? So it's all these different questions, 64 questions to ask before you get engaged. And those are really great conversational topics to walk through with someone who you are seriously considering getting married to, or even just questions to walk through for yourself. Just things to think about, man, how would I answer this question? So it's just different things, different resources. I'll go ahead and tag that below. I pray that this episode has helped you. I hope that you have a blessed week, and I'll see you in the next episode.